One of the critical areas that principals have to be aware of is ASB and the whole thing with associated student body funds. And it varies from district to district in terms of what grade levels are allowed to participate. Some districts don't even allow elementary at all to have ASB, others do. High school is much more complex than middle school ASB. But would you talk to us about the issues that relate to principals and where your involvement comes in with helping them do it correctly?
Well, I think overall your principal is in charge of the ASB functions. Even though you will have, say, an ASB advisor, could be a full-time advisor at a high school, could be a teacher with release time, the principal's still responsible for the funds. And this is the one area that many times administrators can lose their jobs over. So it's very serious. I think some of the things that you have to do relative to what's going on is always know what your fundraisers are, what they're doing, what they're fundraising for, how are they collecting the dollars, and for what purpose. You can't have a fundraiser without having some reason why, in order to raise funds for the dance, for the general ASB, so that they can plan their expenditures out. That's a critical role that the principals actually approve or should approve all fundraising on campus.
And they're held accountable even if they didn't, correct?
Exactly. That means the principal, you have to know. So you have to actively go out and seek knowledge and find out what is happening within the ASB, because ultimately you're responsible for it. And theoretically, the principals should be approving all fundraisers and all items such as dances, booster club events, those types of things that may or may not be ASB, but the principals are responsible for them. And it's one area that really has lots of cash that runs through this. Most of the fundraising events that happen are things that kids are collecting cash for or parents are collecting cash for. And so it's vital that you have cash handling procedures in place, that you've talked to your accounting department and they know what's happening, so that they can advise you properly on what should be accounted for and how it should be accounted for. Because the one thing I tell principals is this: you will be audited. The ASB and a good firm will audit an ASB every single year. And so if you're not, then you will be in the next fiscal year. But ASB has the most exceptions for the auditors to come out and have an audit exception for. They go to your board and they will see them. And they're generally called out in doing so. So be aware you're accountable for them and that it is still a fund of the school district. Many times administrators believe the ASB is separate and distinct from the school district, and that is not the case. You are still a fund of the school. It still has all the responsibilities that the school district has to have control over. And so be aware, then don't get caught without knowledge and without going out and saying, I've done all of my due diligence and looking at and understanding what is going on with the ASB.
Can the advisor of the ASB or the principal just decide how to spend the funds?
All funds must be approved by either the club and the ASB council, or if it's not a club account, then just the ASB council can approve an expenditure. You cannot have a principal and an ASB advisor approve an expenditure. You will be called out as an audit exception if any expenditure happens without council approval in the minutes that said we will pay this bill.
Is there training available? Before you answer that, let me ask you, would a new principal, be wise to assume when they come into a school that what's in place is appropriate?
I would not recommend that. I would recommend you do your own due diligence. That the California Schools Accounting Manual has an ASB component of that, that you have reviewed ASB Accounting Manual in doing so. And I recommend that the principal and the ASB advisor and the bookkeeper, if there is such one, along with any district office personnel that helps oversee this, attend the CASBO accounting, ASB accounting seminars or
CASBO
training.
Is?
California Association of School Business Officials. They have an excellent one-day seminar that goes through all of the issues of an ASB, what you should have in place, and many times auditors attend this so that they're hearing the same thing. That is the best practices model, and I highly recommend new principals, and actually principals do this each and every year. I think it's such a large liability that it pays to really make sure you're educated and know what's the best practices is.
What's your involvement with activities they do? Are there some activities they shouldn't do and you need to tell them that?
Absolutely. What happens generally is the ASB will come to me and say, Ray, we would like to do this activity and have these things for the kids to do. One of the things that is always a red flag is the jolly jumpers, or they call them the rebounding items. And what it is, kids go in and it's inflated and they jump around together within a confines of a blow-up area. Those have no insurance coverage by your JPA.
And a JPA
And
is?
the Joint Powers Authority is many districts come together in order to purchase insurance in bulk, and it becomes less expensive that you belong to. Our JPA, Joint Powers Authority, has our liability insurance, and we do not have coverage, and I believe they call them rebounding machines. So any of those types of items would not have coverage. I strongly recommend all unusual activities that are coming through be pre-approved by the Joint Powers Authority, or your JPA, with your liability insurance. And if you don't have a JPA, whatever liability insurance the district is contacted for.
And to check that out, they would contact the business office.
The business office, and generally you may have somebody that does risk management. Those are the people that you would go through in order to check with the liability insurance carrier.
Well, I think you've made them aware of a lot of things that they need to pay attention to as the person responsible for ASB. And as you and I talked before we turned it on, there are more administrators who lose their jobs and sometimes actually commit a felony over their mishandling of ASB. So it's something you need to take very seriously.
Absolutely. Just depositing the wrestling coach takes the dollars that he receives from the wrestling team, deposits them into his account, and then writes a check to the meet. That is an offense that you could lose your credential over. Just the fact, even though he didn't keep any of the money for himself, but he deposited in his account and then wrote a check, that is a potential credential revocation, and could be as much as a felony if it's over $1,000, and under it could still be a misdemeanor with revocation of your credential.
So I think you've got a lot to think about, and I believe after watching this video you will take ASB seriously.